This is Hemet.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. Please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast to support the show, get your ad-free and bonus episodes. And every story I have this week feels like it's an existential crisis.
Oh, neato.
Which is always good in this environment.
It's a fun vibe to bring into my house every week.
I do what I can. Let's start with what the Supreme Court did this week, because this is going to have repercussions down the line. They heard a case this week about the public/religious charter school in Oklahoma that is the Catholic school.
The one that the Oklahomans don't want?
Yes. And I'll give you a quick recap of what this case is about, and then what did the justices actually say and do during the oral arguments. So the school in question here is St. Isidore of Seville Catholic Virtual School. And this would be, in theory, a publicly funded, because it's charter, publicly funded charter school that Christians tried to open in Oklahoma last year. But the state Supreme Court stopped them. It was a 7-1 decision. It wasn't even close, because the state Supreme Court basically said, well, our Constitution in Oklahoma says that you can't use public funding for religious purposes, which is exactly what this is. So no, you can't do it.
Right.
And it's not just that the state would have funded the school. It's that the problems went beyond that, because unlike public schools, St. Isidore would not require teachers to be certified. They would not have to accept openly LGBTQ teachers. They would explicitly promote Catholic doctrine during school hours. And there was the possibility that, let's say you're a student there, you got pregnant because you're a teenager. You could get expelled, so could trans students, for, the crime of existing.
Sure.
And, sex education wouldn't be in the curriculum. It could be omitted. And this school would not have the resources to take on special needs students. So, this is not a charter school that happens to be Catholic in name. Yeah. This was a Catholic school that just wants public funding, so they call themselves a charter school. And it was so egregious that Oklahoma's Attorney General, Gentner Drummond, now a Republican candidate for governor, he was like, taxpayers do not need to foot the bill for this. He filed a lawsuit to stop that place from opening up. And the Oklahoma Supreme Court is like, yeah, we're going to listen to this Republican and not the million others who are trying to get us to fund it. So this is exactly what the right wing knew would happen.
Yeah.
They anticipated this would get shut down, and they appealed to their friends at the Supreme Court, because they said, well, if you deny us this funding, based on the current Supreme Court's rulings, they're saying, well, you allow charter schools to receive public money, and we're a charter school, so how dare you say no to us just because we're religious? That's religious discrimination.
But it super isn't, and it's constitutional, and they're wrong, but they're going to win anyway.
That's basically their theory of the case. And according to SCOTUS blog, the state of Oklahoma, officially, because it's run, the Attorney General's office, run by Gentner Drummond, the state said, hey, Supreme Court, do not take up this case. You have no reason to take up this case. This is pretty cut and dry. Our state already took care of this.
And SCOTUS
you do not need to intervene.
Thirsty for it, weren't they?
Yeah, the school intends to promote religion. Our Constitution says no. End of story. We're good, but out.
States' rights, question mark?
Yeah, right? No, it doesn't matter if the Supreme Court wants it. So in January, they said, oh, no, we're taking this case.
Cool.
Now, weirdly enough, Amy Coney Barrett said, I'm not going to participate.
That's right. She's recusing herself.
She recused herself. Why? She didn't really give an explanation, but if you look through the conspiracy theory map of Amy Coney Barrett, she's close friends with a professor from Notre Dame who helped advise the Catholic school. And so people are assuming that's probably why she doesn't want to give the appearance of bias. Okay, fine. But that means, in theory, there's still a 5-3 on paper count against church-state separation. So it's not, it's not going to be 6-3, but it may be 5-3. All the church-state separation groups, they said, this is what they said in a joint statement at the time in January, the law is clear. Charter schools are public schools and must be secular and open to all students. The Oklahoma Supreme Court correctly found that the state's approval of a religious public charter school was unlawful and unconstitutional. We urge the U.S. Supreme Court to affirm that ruling and safeguard public education, church-state separation, and religious freedom for all, ... Converting public schools into Sunday schools would be a dangerous sea change for our democracy.
Correct.
So all this was, they actually also filed a lawsuit to shut this place down, but their lawsuit was basically shoved aside because Oklahoma's attorney general's like, I got this.
We already are, yeah.
We're good. And that's the one they ultimately ruled on, the state Supreme Court. So this is what we were worried about. And when the Supreme Court took up the case, the right-wing group Alliance Defending Freedom was very excited about this because they figured they knew what was going to happen here.
Oh, they love finding freedom to defend.
Yeah. And in Oklahoma, Gentner Drummond was the unusual one because he was against this. The governor, Kevin Stitt, state superintendent of public instruction, Ryan Walters, they have advocated for this school. Ryan Walters actually helped cast one of the votes to make sure this place got money. And so this is what we were all afraid of back in January.
Catholic?
Dude, there's more stories about Ryan Walters that I don't even have time to get into this week. Wait, really quick.
Oh, boy.
He already promoted social studies standards that we have talked about in this show that are basically like Jesus-centric, like children in third grade need to know what great people have done throughout history, like Jesus.
And one of them is like Ruth from the Bible.
Yeah. And what's weird about it is he's like, well, we took public comment and people chimed in. And then he's like, hey, everyone, it's like 5:00 and you're voting on this the next day, school board, state school board. Here's the revised version. It's 400 pages. You're voting on this in the morning. Bye. See you then. And the board's like, well, I haven't had a chance to look at this. What changes did you make?
Yeah.
They're all
Don't
subtle and small. Don't worry about it. And when people...
It's just a law. It's just your entire fucking job here.
And when people actually look through what they voted on later, not at the time, because they didn't have time. And when it was... what we found is that he introduced things like... the previous standards said things like we have to study Joe Biden's accomplishments and challenges during his administration.
Christ.
Now it just says, look at his challenges. It says, let's discuss how the 2020 election was rigged.
Wow. Okay.
So
okay.
it's just right-wing revisionism, and that's what they approved.
This
and
is so
it's so bad. Anyway, that's not even the story I'm getting into. So in order...
This is like how 12-year-olds would run a country.
It's dumb 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
Yes. 12-year-olds would have far more professionalism than Ryan Walters.
True.
So anyway,
maybe 6-year-olds?
So basically, the Supreme Court took up this case, and in order to overturn what the Oklahoma Supreme Court did, it has to be a 5-3 ruling now. If any of those conservative justices decide, no, I think Oklahoma Supreme Court got it right, or I don't want to butt in, and ironically, John Roberts is the most likely to do that, but he probably won't. Then if it's 4-4 tie, the ruling stands. But so that's what we were thinking heading into this week, because they heard this case on Wednesday. And I just want to point out a couple things that were said in response. To people who listen to the oral arguments know how to interpret what the justices are hinting at.
Sure.
And one of the things from Vox's Ian Millhiser is that Brett Kavanaugh made it clear. I mean, Brett Kavanaugh wants this place to get public funding.
Sure.
And one of his arguments that it seems like it was popular among the conservatives is that under his vision of church-state separation, which doesn't really exist in Brett Kavanaugh's mind, as long as no one's forced to go to this school, there's no reason they cannot get public funding for their Catholic charter school. Because church-state separation means I'm not forcing you to believe what they believe. And that's what Brett Kavanaugh wants. This is how Millhiser put it. So long as an American can choose not to participate in a state-backed religious operation, church and state do not need to be separate. Indeed, separation of church and state itself is often unconstitutional under this framework.
Cool.
So that in Brett Kavanaugh's theory...
this guy, is one of the most important... No. Brett Kavanaugh is one of the most important people in the country and just has a fundamentally flawed understanding of the First Amendment.
Yeah, or the even worse theory is, no, he totally understands the First Amendment.
Oh,
he just
purposely
hates it.
Trying to deconstruct it with his seat.
And if that's the logic,
and he's a rapist. Let's never forget that.
Then any government entity could say, yeah, we're promoting religion using our government positions, whether it's putting up a 10 Commandments monument somewhere or doing anything. But as long as we're not forcing you to abide by it or accept it, it's fine. That's the long arm of where this could go.
It never ceases to absolutely stun me how these people who have so much power, how they choose to wield it for the stupidest, dumbest bullshit ever. What's the? This is why you wanted to get where you were, so you could make Oklahoma, a broke ass state with low education standards, worse? That's your legacy, Brett Kavanaugh?
No, that's not his legacy. His legacy is far worse than that.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
But for what it's
all
worth,
of that, and also he raped a lady.
That too. Elena Kagan, allegedly. Elena Kagan, for her part, they never did an investigation. She tried to point out all the problems.
He raped somebody.
Allegedly.
Nah.
Do the investigation. They didn't. Elena Kagan pointed out, this is also from Millhiser, asked a bunch of questions like, where are we going with this? If all of you get your way, where are we going with this? What if a religious charter school refused to educate children who do not share the school's faith? Or suppose that a religious charter school wants to toss out state curricular standards altogether. She brought up an example of an Orthodox Jewish yeshiva where instructors would focus almost entirely on the Talmud to the exclusion of topics like math and English, which we saw in New York State.
Would
taxpayers be required to fund that school as well? Like, where are we going with this?
That was a huge deal when it broke.
Yeah. So the question we're asking, that the legal people are asking is, okay, it looks very much this will be a 5-3 decision in favor of the Catholic charter school, but are they going to say it applies only to that school? Are they going to open the door to every government entity allowed to support religion? Like, how broad is this going to be? We don't know. And that's what's disturbing. This is the end of Ian's piece. For now, it appears the Republican justices' religious conservative revolution is likely to march onward, remaking public schools and potentially many other public institutions. So, disturbing. That's where it's at. They will probably get... we'll hear the ruling on this by the end of June, probably. But that's where they're at. Great times.
Are any of the conservatives telegraphing that they're...
John Roberts asked questions that poked both sides of the oral arguments. But again, it's John Roberts. You don't expect him to do the right thing. If he does, it's a surprise.
Yeah.
But the other four didn't even bother hinting that they might rule the other way. John Roberts is the only one who's like, okay, I don't like what the church-state separation side is saying. Yeah, we know. But also when the right-wing groups were up there presenting, he's like, okay, but there are problems with this because of this and this.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you're at least playing the part, but I am assuming I know where you're going with this because you're John Roberts. But that's why they were saying, okay, it's probably 5-3. We don't know how bad it's going to be. There's a possibility it's 4-4, maybe. And if that's the case, great. That's the best we can hope for. Like, maybe church-state separation lives on another day.
So wait, if the justices have already decided, is Clarence Thomas just sitting there like playing with a paper football or something like that?
Correct. That is what he does during oral arguments.
This is stupid. I don't like those people.
And that's the only, the sad part is the judiciary is the only part of government we can rely on right now.
Oklahoma, where the wind comes.
Democrats currently control 0 of 6 parts of the government if you want to break it up into sixths.
Yeah.
So anyway,
that's fun.
Let's jump to maybe some good news. I figured I'd give you one of these.
Wait. I get good news? I assumed this is going to be a relentless march until doom.
Yeah, it'll get there. So the Southern Baptist Convention, the largest Protestant denomination in the country, they just released their annual church profile. Basically, it's not the Catholic Church where it's completely top down, but there is an overarching organization that kind of collects money for mission trips and stuff like that. And they do work to be like, hey, where are y'all at with everything in the country?
What do we think about gay people now?
Right. And they vote, and that's how it works. But they put out their annual church profile. Here's where we stand. We ask all of the churches in our membership these questions based on their responses is what we got. And what they found is that last year, they lost another 259,824 members.
Whoa.
That brings them to a 50-year low.
When you say members, do you mean human members or church?
Human members.
Okay.
And basically, membership has been declining for now 18 straight years. It's gone down
18?
Every single one. And last year, they were like, okay, what's the spin we could put? Because we're still losing members. They said the decline in membership is slower than it was in the past. But this year, they're
Welcome
like,
to the spin zone.
I guess we're that's not a trend. They're like, oh, right, we're right back to that trend where we just keep going down.
And I'm sure they're all being really self-reflective about why people are leaving the church.
So much. The other thing is, let me read you the first line of how they put out this information. In 2024, the Southern Baptist Convention baptized more new members than in any of the previous 7 years, but still saw an 18th consecutive year of overall membership decline. So that's how they were spinning this. You guys, we baptized more people than we have in a really long time. But that's like saying if you have a baptismal pool, they're like, we're filling this up. We keep baptizing people, but it's leaking faster than we can fill it.
Yeah.
That's kind of where this is going. And if you think of like an upside down hockey stick where it was going up and up and up and then suddenly takes a sharp turn downward, that is what their membership chart looks like right now. It was going up for many from 1950 to like 2003. It was just up every single year. Maybe not exponential growth, wasn't even linear growth. It was slower growth every single year, but it was still moving up.
I don't know what linear growth is versus what you're talking about.
And then in 2003, they started losing members slowly and then continuously.
2003, that's so surprising. That's like, it
that
feels
was their
very
high water mark.
close after 9/11. It feels like people were still like feeling
Clinging
the
to
spirit.
religion. Yeah. And then they saw, I think, they started seeing George W. Bush and they're like, oh, we don't like being associated with his policies.
Do you really think that?
I think that plays a big role. Also, that's when Google came around and people were like, oh, I can look this stuff up. Oh, shit, I've been lied to. There's a lot of factors, but I think those are big ones. But here's some important numbers. In 2021, just to go back a few years, 2021, there were 13.7 million Southern Baptists in the country. That's why they're the largest Protestant denomination.
Right.
2022, it was 13.2 million. 2023, it was like 12.99 million. Last year, 2024, it dropped to 12.7 million. So that's where we're at now. The last time the SBC had membership this low for them, it was 1974. Wow. When the numbers were still heading up and like Jimmy Carter would eventually be elected president.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now,
interesting.
in 2003, their high water mark, they were at 16.3 million members. So while the number of baptisms and in-person attendance numbers have gone up from 2023, that doesn't counteract the fact that fewer people want to be called a Southern Baptist.
Important question of clarification. Would you... does this take into account churches that have left the SBC?
We'll talk about the churches that have left.
Because wasn't that kind of a big controversy?
There's a few high-profile churches that have left.
So
but that's not really that wouldn't change the needle this much.
Got you. Thank you.
Basically, people are walking away from the church, not going to church anymore, Southern Baptist churches.
And not replacing it with any other church.
And not really replacing it with anything, which is a separate issue. But the number of people who are going to, maybe post-COVID, they're like, all right, I want to go back to church. I'm still a Baptist, but I was not going for a while. That is going up a little bit. And people who are new to the church are like officially becoming members and getting dunked in the tank. But that doesn't make, and that is more so than it was the year before, but it doesn't make up for the fact that more people are still going through the exits.
Do you think there's ever going to be a tipping point for the Southern Baptist Convention to like break up in any meaningful way? Or do you think it's just going to continue to shrink?
There are schisms in like the Methodist Church and things like that. That is not what's going on in the SBC.
They're holding strong.
They are holding strong. Now, I will remind you that in 2023, when this report came out, and it didn't look great, their executive director of Lifeway Research, which is the SBC arm that does all this analysis, he said, okay, why are we dropping so quickly with the numbers? Well, many churches now, 2022... post-COVID, he said in 2023. Well, last year, they're just catching up on their record keeping, cleaning up their membership roll, and crossing out like the names of people who stopped participating years ago. That's why you see these numbers dropping the way they are. But then if those rolls were cleaned up, hey, I can look into the future now. If those rolls were cleaned up, why does the membership continue to drop?
Yeah, if you cleaned them up in 2022, it is now 2025, sir. That was an untidy record room indeed.
We said this before, but this critic said it too. The problem was never the paperwork.
Of course.
Right? Now, what is he saying this year when this report came out? Now he's saying...
Satan has infiltrated.
No, he doesn't talk. Nothing bad is happening, you guys. What are you even looking at? Growth in baptisms continues to exceed trend lines before the pandemic. Like, we're doing better with baptisms than we were before the pandemic.
He found the only piece of good news in that whole damn document.
He adds, the slow return of pre-COVID worship attendees is largely over. Churches' new attendees are now mostly new believers and those transferring from other churches. Which, okay, but you're still not making up for the ones who are leaving or dying.
Yeah.
And that's like everybody.
Transfer from other churches? Like people transfer away from like Catholicism and into Methodism?
Or more likely, like I went to a church that wasn't going hard and I want to go to a real church, so I'll go to an SBC
They weren't
church.
even yelling about gay people going to hell. I hated it.
And nowhere in there, I mean, granted, their report's more like a press release write-up, but nowhere in there did they mention how potential members might be turned off by the SBC's pathetic attempts at addressing sex abuse or downplaying sexual misconduct among former leaders or punishing churches with women in any sort of leadership roles. More on that in a second. Or how they've pushed out black pastors for challenging like white supremacy or being losing prominent advocates who used to be like their biggest billboards. And they're like, well, I don't like what the SBC is doing. So they're like, well, then get the fuck out. Or their anti-gay stuff. Like a 2024 survey found that negative religious teachings or treatment of gay or lesbian people was one of the top reasons people gave for why they left the religion of their childhood. And they're not doing anything about any of that. And going back to the point you made, what about those big churches that are leaving? Because there are a few churches. Saddleback Church in California, that was Rick Warren's place. Elevation Church in North Carolina, which is led by a guy named Stephen Furtick, who's one of those imagine loud alpha male Theobro types.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to be clear. Hammett did not read those names off his screen. He just has those locked and loaded in his stupid brain.
I live in very weird rabbit holes online.
I cannot believe you're a real person.
Just like this, a few weeks ago, another church named New Spring Church in South Carolina, they've all left official membership with the SBC. Their entire churches are like, we're out. Why? Because all those churches said, sure, the person at the top is still Rick Warren or his replacement or Furtick or whatever he's doing. But also, we also have like 20 pastors on staff and they all specialize in different things. And in some of those cases, we have women in those roles and we think they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
And the SBC's like, yeah, but also, come on. And they're like, well, we are doing just fine on our own, thank you very much. And we're fine with them. And so we would rather have those women in certain leadership roles than to be affiliated with the SBC, which is doing nothing for us.
Yeah,
so all three of those, by the way, were ranked among the top 100 largest churches in the country.
And what are we looking at? Like a couple thousand members of those individual churches?
Tens of thousands.
Thousands.
Yep. So those are all groups where those tens of thousands of members are just off the list.
So,
So when they lose 250,000 members, that is not one big-ass church leaving. That alone would not move the needle.
I see.
It's a lot more than that. And why are they releasing this report now? Because in a month, in June, the SBC will hold its annual meeting. Once a year, they get together. They discuss where do we need to go as a denomination. And one of the biggest debates is whether they want to adopt an amendment to their bylaws that says all cooperating churches that are members of the Southern Baptist Convention have to promise to, quote, not affirm, appoint, or employ a woman as a pastor of any kind. It's not officially in the rules. It's just winked at.
What's the matter with boys?
And because it's just winked at, Rick Warren's church and Furtick's church and all those are like, yeah, we're out. It's not even a rule yet. It's just hinted at. And they're going to decide, should we go all in on the no girls allowed in our club thing?
What's the benefit of being in the SBC?
The benefit if you're a church leader is that by being members, I mean, one, we officially get to call ourselves Southern Baptists as opposed to generic Christians.
Okay,
but more
that's
importantly, what that means for us is we pay our dues to the SBC every year. And that goes toward mission trips that we can't do on our own. There are certain types of services they provide, even if I'm using this in the best sense of the word. They do work overseas in ways any church by itself cannot replicate.
Sure.
Right? So it's the same as politics. Do I want a super liberal candidate to run for office? Sure. And even if they get elected, though, that's not going to move the needle that much because they're one voice.
Yeah.
However, if I support the Democratic Party for all its faults, I have a better chance of getting big systematic change done.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why, those churches are for all the benefits we get with the SBC, we'd rather go on our own because we don't agree with your policies. Anyway, what about the sexual abuse, which they're not addressing? Bob Smetana at Religion News Service, here's how he summed it up. Along with demographic decline, because old people are dying, the SBC has experienced significant conflict over the past decade with leadership turnover at several of its major agencies, feuds over politics, and a sexual abuse scandal which led to millions in legal costs and a series of reforms passed in 2022. Those reforms, including a database listing abusive pastors, have stalled in recent years, with leaders saying that for now the database is no longer a priority. And the reason they said we can't do a database, because the Catholic Church, as we all know, it's saying if a priest is accused of something, what we don't want to see is that priest just shuffled over to another church, right? That's the thing historically the Catholic Church has done with problematic priests.
Right.
Southern Baptist, because it's not that sort of hierarchy, you could be fired from one church for whatever reason, someone accused you of this. Well, we're just going to fire you and you deal with it. It's not a legal problem yet. It's not even criminal, but we're letting you go. They just hike 3 feet over to another church, and that church doesn't call references.
Right.
They're just new hire? Great, you work with the kids now. That's how a lot of them work. So there was an argument when newspaper reports came out about how many predators were in Southern Baptist churches. Why don't we keep a database of people so that if you want to hire someone, you could look them up in our database and see why they were fired or if they were accused of anything. And the Southern Baptist Convention's ooh, we're setting ourselves up for legal liability with that one.
That's true.
And so they said, let's just not do that and just keep allowing shit to happen.
I mean, they really should be running background checks on people anyway.
I mean, you would think. I think a lot of smaller churches.
Fired, it's probably not going to make it through to a background check.
Keep in mind, a lot of Southern Baptist churches are definitely not mega churches. They're small mom and pop stores that are we just want to hire someone to work with our kids, the 3 of them that we have.
Yeah, in our little strip mall church.
We're not going to do giant corporate background checks for anybody. We'll just take references and be done with it. Or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why.
I still think, to be clear, they should run background checks if people deal with children.
What about other concerns?
Yeah.
Last year, in response to the sex abuse, the SBC asked all the church members, hey, when you're filling out membership numbers for our survey here, can we also ask you how many of you require background checks for staffers who work with kids?
Oh boy.
And the answer was 58% of congregations only. And an even smaller, and Only 38% said we train our staff in reporting sexual abuse, and only 16% said we do actual care for abuse survivors.
Oh,
This year,
Gang?
guess what those numbers are this year?
What?
We don't know because they didn't even ask.
No. This is,
Yeah.
boy.
And
I
on
don't,
top of that,
why? Like what? Not to be whatever, but why don't you want to protect the children in your care?
sorry.
Like, why is that not a priority?
Their priority next month is should we allow women in our He-Man Women's Haters Club thing. Also, their public outreach is pretty pathetic. Remember that famously a couple years ago, their former president of the SBC, Bart Barber, he was on 60 Minutes. He was like the fresh face on the SBC. They did a profile of this guy. And even in that, where he presented what he felt was a more compassionate side of the SBC that cares about this stuff and is going to address this stuff. In that interview, he still ended up saying, yeah, I want to force children to have their rapists' babies, regardless of circumstance, because fetuses matter more than mothers. He also promoted conversion therapy, which is dangerous and ineffective. He said someone in a same-sex marriage could not possibly be a, quote, good Christian.
Nice.
And he denied the existence of trans people. And in that same interview, he's like, yeah, I voted for Donald Trump in 2020. So I'm not blaming this on him. He is not the problem. He's symptomatic of the problem. But when the key representative of your religion, by the way, he was praised for that appearance on the show.
So honestly, the press has been so morally bankrupt lately. Yeah. It's obnoxious to watch.
And that guy was good on camera. What's going to happen when they have other people in leadership roles who are not? And by the way, as Trump's popularity continues to dwindle, we can only hope he's dragging down some of these conservative Christians with him. Here's another.
I thought Elon Musk was quitting the government. What happened there?
No, he says he is, but he has nowhere else to go. Tesla doesn't want him. Trump is the only guy that wants Elon Musk around. So he's not officially leaving anytime soon. Even no matter what the headlines say. Let me add this from the report, the SBC's report this week. They're still doing fine. Like, if Elon Musk has a bad day in the stock market, like, no one's going to feel bad for him because, one, why? Yeah. But two, he's still filthy rich. Guess how much money the SBC said they took in last year, according to their report? In 2023, just to go back, it was slightly above $10 billion. Where are they at now?
Probably like 12 billion. They probably inexplicably grew.
It didn't because they lost all those members. It went down a little bit. Now they're only at
charging more per head.
9.6 billion.
Oh,
so
what are they going to do?
Sad.
Boy, between them and Texas and all of their cash reserves, boy, it sure would be nice if they did something helpful with that money.
They'll survive for a long time to come, no matter how much membership drops. But the only reason we're talking about this is the SBC is powerful. Again, largest Protestant denomination in the country, and yet they only have 4.4% of Americans who call themselves Southern Baptists. But the next one on the list, the second most popular Protestant denomination, United Methodists, at 2.2% of the country.
Oh.
So they double the next biggest denomination in the country.
Yeah.
That's why they have outsized power here, because no other group has that.
But that's still not representative of a huge swath of the American public the way they think they are.
I mean, Christians still represent a shit ton of Americans, but they're not specifically in this denomination.
Yeah.
But again,
you're not wasting their time wondering if women are humans too.
Yeah. So there's reason to think Southern Baptists are not about to become more popular. Like, have all the baptisms you want. It doesn't change the writing on the wall. But people, I think, are realizing how damaging all this is. They're walking away. Maybe they're not ditching God altogether, but they're discovering, you know what? I'm fine on my own. I don't need to support a church that does more harm than good.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at with the Southern Baptists. You want another amusing story? I'll give you another amusing story.
This is fun. I'm enjoying this new show that we have mildly good news.
Last week, we talked about Hartford, Connecticut, because they flew a Christian flag outside their city hall just before Easter. And two of their city council members were like, this is a bad idea. One of the guys is like, I wrote the law. I'm telling you, I wrote the ordinance for this. This is going to count as city-endorsed speech.
Yeah.
And we should not be endorsing a religion and all that stuff. And after we talked about that, after I wrote about all of that, activist Chaz Stevens, who we've talked about, who's basically a shit stirrer, he's like, oh, interesting. They put up Christian flags in Hartford. Well, I got a flag. So he wrote to Hartford and several other cities saying, I want you to put up my flag endorsing, quote, the Church of Satanology and Perpetual Soiree. And he has, yep. And the subtitle on the flag says, Satan loves the First Amendment. This man is not a Satanic Temple member or anything like that. He's just a dude on his own.
No, he's not a member of the Satanorific.
Nope. It says at the top of the flag, Ministry of Chaz the Bropostle. I
hate that.
So he's already made this request in other cities that have hoisted religious flags, including Bridgeport, Connecticut, Merced, California, Manteca, California, Johnson City, Tennessee, Lock Haven, Pennsylvania. He said to a journalist, the flag says Satan loves the First Amendment. It's not profane. It's not vulgar. There's nothing about this flag that should raise an eyebrow. If you put the cross up, which is a symbol of their beliefs, which is their flag, you should put up my flag. And he also said, when they put up the Christian flag, they made the flagpole a public forum. And a public forum, you have to have the free flow of information. You cannot pick and choose.
That's right.
So I spoke to him earlier this week. He said he is planning to send letters to more cities. And he also hopes to train other activists, by the way. He has a website now where he's doing training. It's called Revolt Training. Revolt.training is the website. And he said, you've opened the door to the city officials who allow Christian flags to go up. You've opened the door.
Yeah.
I'm simply walking through it with horns held high and very, very sharp elbows. I'm not here to provoke. I'm here to participate, but I won't be denied the rights you've granted others. And the irony is that the argument he's using to raise his flag in these cities is one that was basically pushed by conservative Christians who wanted to fly their flag in Boston.
Yeah.
Because if you recall, the Supreme Court said in 2022, what happened in Boston is that a guy said, raise my Christian flag. And the city said, I don't think we can do that. So we're saying no. He sued. Supreme Court ruled on his side. They said, you have an open forum.
Yeah.
If you do, you can't deny someone their flag just because he happens to be Christian, because it's an open forum. In Hartford, the guy who wrote the ordinance is like, well, then let's just call this not an open forum, and that anything that goes up on our flagpole is city-endorsed speech. That's why we're different from them.
Yeah.
And Chaz is like, oh, you've decided to make it an open forum in Hartford because you didn't listen to that guy?
Fancy
well,
that.
guess what? Here I am. His activism, by the way, even if you think he's trolling, his activism, it made the front page of the Hartford Courant, newspaper.
Let's be clear. He absolutely is trolling, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right. And that is what he does well. He's I'm here to get attention for these issues.
He finds his buttons.
Yeah. And he had that top headline in that Hartford newspaper, and on the front page, it included the line. They included a quotation from him. If you play a stupid game, you are going to win stupid prizes.
Nice.
And I will say he has been successful in the past because in Florida, the Broward County Public Schools, they used to allow churches to buy advertising outside football stadiums on the fencing. And so he's like, well, then put up my advertisement. Same thing as his flag.
Yeah.
And he was denied, and he sued the district by himself. He's not a lawyer. He just wrote up his own lawsuit.
Yeah.
Guess what? It didn't work. However, a judge tossed it out. However, as that lawsuit was still going through, the school district said, we're changing our policies to ban religious and political messaging, which worked for his behalf.
Yeah.
He's like, I got the policy changed.
Yeah.
But also that sets them up to be sued by a right-wing group that says you're not allowed to say no when you have a public forum. So it's beautiful. All these people are doing all the wrong things because no one knows how to interpret the Supreme Court anymore. So anyway, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if his flag is going to go up. He did say in an email he considers the Hartford policy to be selective censorship cloaked in bureaucratic overreach. And he's like, yeah, put up my flag. And if you say no to me, he's raising money right now to go after these people.
Is the flag at least cool looking?
No comment.
Oh.
It's red with a lot of writing, as opposed to the Christian flag, which is like a red cross on a blue square on a white background.
field.
And that's it.
Yeah.
His has a lot of writing. You got to spend time to read it.
Roman
But
Mars
it doesn't
would not
matter.
approve
This
of
is
that
my
flag.
argument for all those atheist billboards that used to go up like 10, 15 years ago, which is, you know what? Some of them have really shitty graphic design, but also the entire point of all of this is to make headlines, not to make people like you or join your group.
Sure.
And so would I say, is this an ideal flag? Not really. Does it matter? No, he's getting exactly what he wants out of it, so it works.
But it could also be a cool flag, too.
Could be, but who cares, is my point.
Obviously, I do.
Right? Like, if you put up a picture of something, that would be catchier and make your point. But also, I think his whole point is, I'm going to shove as much of my wording as I want, so Satanology is the word that has bigger font than everything else. You know what I mean?
Satanology is pretty stupid,
So
I gotta say.
There you go. Let me jump to a different story. I don't think anyone else has reported on this, so I'm excited. I like this one.
Breaking news.
Sure. Earlier this last month, in April, a guy named Joseph Richardson, he is a member of the Central Florida Free Thought community.
Okay.
He asked the city of Winter Garden, Florida, to issue a Day of Reason proclamation for May. Like, today is the day of prayer. As we make this, he's like, you already have stuff. You've already issued a proclamation for the day of prayer.
Yeah.
So, like, put up my proclamation, like, issue a proclamation for the day of reason. He even gave them the wording for it, which is fine. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but here's the first clause. Whereas the principles of reason, critical thinking, and the scientific method are fundamental to the pursuit of knowledge, the advancement of society, and the betterment of humankind, yada, yada, yada. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, the mayor, proclaim today a National Day of Reason, urging all citizens to reflect on the importance of critical thinking, to engage in open and respectful dialogue, and to uphold the principles of secular democracy. Okay, fine. Yeah. There's honestly nothing in this that is anti-religious, unless you think, wait, they're pushing critical thinking.
Yeah.
I think I know what that means.
Or just saying the word secular scares them.
Yeah. So it's not inherently anti-religious. But also, if you're going to issue a proclamation for something like the Day of Prayer, the right way to handle this is to say, yeah, we'll issue your proclamation too. That way, no one's going to accuse us of promoting atheism. That's not what this is. Well, also, cities issue all kinds of proclamations.
People can accuse anybody of anything.
Yeah. Cities issue proclamations for all sorts of things. No one's saying this is an endorsement. Someone in your community wanted it. Fine, we'll put a stamp on it. You can have your little photo op, and that's fine, right? The only way you lose is if you reject it and draw negative attention to yourself.
Barbra Streisand effect.
Yep. So the morning after he submitted that request, the city clerk responded to Joseph with a message saying this, I'm quoting, "Proclamations are at the pleasure of Mayor Reese and presented to him for consideration by our city manager, John C. Williams. Your request is being forwarded to both of them for review." Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Fine. So 2 weeks later, he had not heard back. So he followed up. He's like, what happened to my proclamation? And the response he got is, the proclamation you have requested, as noted in this communication, is not on the April 24th agenda. That's it.
Oh.
Like, it's not on the agenda. We're not considering it. Huh. And he's like, well, what was wrong with what I submitted? Why are they not doing this? And then they never wrote back to him.
Uh-oh.
Okay. So that's interesting and weird and out of nowhere. So here's the thing. There's a local news outlet, independent news outlet called Vox Populi in the city of Winter Garden. Its editor-in-chief is a woman named Noreen Dworkin. So she wanted to follow up on this. So when they had their next meeting on April 24th, she showed up and she wanted to speak. She signed up to speak during their public comments section, and she wanted to know why they rejected the Day of Reason proclamation. And so here's the mayor, John Reese, spelled R-E-E-S. He's there. And she said, I spoke to the city manager about it, but he kept saying I have to ask the mayor about it. So here I am. Right?
Oh, boy.
And I'm going to read you some of their conversation. My question is, Mr. Mayor, what is objectionable about this proclamation? He says, I think the city manager answered you, and I'll let it go at that. Okay, that didn't answer anything. Then she says, I have one more question that I didn't ask the city manager, but I'll ask it to you. He's like, just send it. Send it the right way. Send it right. I did. You don't respond. Then he chimes in, no, to be honest with you, I don't read anything you write. I'll tell you that. I think I told you that once before. She says, yes, sir, you did. He says, I don't read anything you write. I see no point in it. A thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And she says, professionally, well, it's still my obligation and my duty to ask these questions of you because regardless of whether you read me or not, there is a question here about... your time is up, ma'am. And she's like, no, I don't believe that it is. How is this not seen as the mayor imposing your own religious views on the committee? I'm not imposing anything. And then he goes on to say, we passed a resolution in 2022 that recognized the value of diversity, equity, and inclusion. He's like, we passed a DEI resolution years ago. So like,
why aren't you guys happy with that?
That's exactly what he said. To which she says, really? The DEI resolution covered it? How is there equity in what you are doing here? And he says, end of discussion. And then she's like, okay.
I do love seeing a dude get cornered and just you realize how very, very, very dumb they are.
So she's like, okay.
Like, just imagine talking to a grown ass adult and he's just yelling, your time's up. Like, dude, you're not like, you're a human being.
And I wanted her to push back as I'm watching the video, but also
fly across that desk and spear tackle him.
But also, she is a professional journalist, and she's like, I'm not here to push for this. I just want answers. He's not going to give me answers, so I guess I'm done. So she says, okay, end of discussion. Thank you, sir. I do appreciate your comments. And you would think he's going to be like, all right, next. No, he decided to keep talking. And I'm going to play for you what he said after he dismissed her.
So she's still in the room?
She's still in the room. Everyone's in the room. And he's like...
who else is in the room?
I mean, the other commissioners and stuff.
Oh.
And he's like, okay, by the way, everyone gathered here, like, I have something else to say to all of you. Let me play this for you.
I'm going to say one other thing. Probably shouldn't, but, we've been said here for 100, 200 times and been ignored. And so they're ignored, and get upset.
Just saying, they always get upset when I say and do things.
And it's my opinion that a couple of them showed no respect for God, no respect for our country, no respect for our flag, no respect for our Pledge of Allegiance, and no respect for the City Commission.
Wow.
And
what an accusation.
I better just say that's sad. Leave it at that.
So just to, I know he mumbles,
sad.
And I know the audio's not great, but what he was saying is these people get upset. But, in my opinion, these people show no respect for God, no respect for our country, no respect for our flag, no respect for our Pledge of Allegiance, and no respect for the City Commission, and that is sad.
It feels like that man has no respect for the journalist or respect for the First Amendment.
Or the job he currently holds.
Or his present job is correct, Emmett. Yes. What a dick.
Yeah. And so I spoke with Dworkin, the lady, the journalist who was there, and she basically said, it's not enough to pass the DEI bill. You have to act on it. And that was her complaint. They weren't acting on it. I brought up, I thought you were super nice, and I don't think you needed to be. And she said, when she spoke to the city manager, he said the mayor was rejecting the proclamation because it didn't raise awareness about an issue or celebrate community events.
But they raised awareness about Jesus?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that logic would apply to the day of prayer. It doesn't raise awareness or celebrate the community, and the mayor had no problem supporting that. I asked her, why didn't you point out that stuff? Because I know you know all that stuff. And she said, look, my job as a journalist is to ask tough questions. If this guy wants to be belligerent, then my job is to expose that so people can see it for themselves. Yeah. Fine, not everyone's going to be an activist. But again, to your point, his job, will anybody care? It would be bad enough if a Republican politician said what he said, but this guy's a mayor. He's supposed to be nonpartisan in that sense. Mm-hmm. He's not supposed to dismiss sensible requests because he personally finds them annoying.
Yeah, sending away the press is not a great look from the outside. If anybody is ever, in their own little petty tyrant era, don't dismiss people and don't wave your hand as I imagine this man waved his hand at her. I know that's me applying.
Shook his fist in the air.
Exactly.
I also spoke to Joseph Richardson, who offered the Day of Reason proclamation, and this is what he told me. Winter Garden is not a Christian city. Mayor Reese has failed over and over to be true to his oath of office. Because of this, I call on the mayor to resign immediately. He won't, but I appreciate the thought. And that doesn't mean people should stop criticizing this mayor's irrational, spiteful decisions.
Yeah, what a prick.
Yeah.
Like, it's so wildly inappropriate. It really speaks to the bubble that a lot of these people live in, that they think that's even close to being appropriate for a fucking political forum.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
All right. You want another happy story-ish?
What?
I know. There's a bunch of them.
This is confusing.
Mostly follow-ups from bad stories where it's like, oh, okay.
Like gently soften the blow from like a month ago?
Yeah. So Arizona has the Peoria Unified School District. It's a big school district. And we talked about this lady, but it's been a few years, I think, since we've talked about her. But basically, one of the people on the school board in Peoria, in Arizona, is a woman named Heather Rooks. And years ago, she started pushing her religion shortly after joining the board in 2023, January of 2023. She gets elected, and there's a portion of their meetings called board comments, where members of the board can just say whatever they want, speak your piece, and we'll continue with the meeting. Most of the time, board members use the opportunity to maybe commemorate a holiday, draw attention to issues faced by the district that may not be on the agenda. So what did she do? And along with one other member of the school board, one of her allies, when it was her time to speak, in one example, she just started quoting Bible verses. Yeah, at one point she quoted...
that's not a waste of anybody's time.
None whatsoever. She quoted Proverbs, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it, which is a verse that's been used to justify child abuse. Another time...
Why are people so thirsty to beat up children?
Man, if you're a conservative Christian, that brings you so much joy.
It.
In March of that year, she made another reference to 1 Corinthians. And at some point, she keeps doing this. The board president at the time said, excuse me, our attorneys have told us that reciting scripture at board meetings goes against the Establishment Clause. And those attorneys said, her argument is, I'm speaking as an individual, not as a member of this board.
Sure.
But also, you're at a school board meeting as a school board representative. You are
it's not
speaking.
like a hat you can take off.
Right. And that's what their attorneys said. Like, your argument that you have free speech rights or First Amendment rights to say whatever you want doesn't apply because you're speaking as a member of the school board, not like on your personal Facebook page or whatever. And by May of 2023, things got even worse because now this other board member, Rebecca Hill, she starts reciting Bible verses too.
Oh, Rebecca.
And so this goes on for a while. So eventually, I'm not going to hash out all of this, but...
No, read every Bible quote they read.
The Freedom from Religion Foundation sends a letter to the district saying you need to put a stop to this. Jean Castine, who's the executive director for Secular Arizona, spoke at a school board meeting and apologized to all the non-evangelical students and families, quote, as a caring adult in this room, because she said, last month, one of the board members called for your eradication because if you're not a Christian, one of those board members said, she quoted a Bible verse that said for anyone who sins, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea.
Why isn't being a dick one of the 10 Commandments?
God is fine with that.
Like, truly, like, can we squeeze one in there that's like, thou shalt not be a little obnoxious D-bag?
So FFRF pointed out, hey, we sued another school district for this sort of thing because in Chino Valley in California, that district was just not even during public comments. During the actual meeting, they were pushing Bible stuff. And that district had to pay out more than $200,000 eventually when we won the case. And so they said, we don't want you to have to do any of this. Yeah, learn the lesson. Take action immediately. They sent a follow-up letter urging the board to censure any board members who abuse their positions by pushing their personal religious beliefs during board meetings. So what happened at the meeting after they got that letter? Heather Rooks said, I don't give a shit. She cited another Bible verse.
maybe I'm not picturing. Is she like filibustering with the Bible? Like,
Let's say you get
what's her
2 minutes
goal
to
here?
make your speech as a board member, and she's using those 2 minutes to just read Bible verses and pretend that they have something to do with kids' education.
That's stupid.
Yes.
Tell them not to do
So
that anymore.
by July of 2023, she finally said, I'm going to refrain from reciting Bible verses at this time, and I will have my attorneys at First Liberty Institute handle this matter.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And her colleague did not make that statement, but said that when she joined the board, I swore to God I would uphold the Constitution, which includes my First Amendment rights. So here's what
I
happened.
fucking love that they think First Amendment right just means they can do or say whatever the fuck they want.
Yes.
Like it's an invisibility cloak that they can. It's like sovereign citizens have this thing too of like, if I say this certain right word, then I get everything I want.
Yeah. So here's where it gets amusing.
Oh no.
At that point, what did she end up doing to resolve this matter? She said, FFRF is threatening to sue the school board. Well, guess what? I'm suing the school board that I am on, because how dare you tell me to not say Bible verses at these meetings?
Nothing. That is
Yeah.
a nothing thing that she just said.
She sued this, like, take that FFRF. I'm getting there first. Her lawsuit said she deserves absolute legislative immunity for reciting the Bible at meetings, asking a judge to rule that my Bible readings are legal. And by the way, I want money for damages and attorney's fees. And that as a relief for all the times they told me to shut my mouth. And it said in the lawsuit, like, the president cites scripture and U.S. officials quote scripture, so there's nothing unlawful about this woman doing likewise. But that's a lie, because as we've seen with invocation prayers...
not an intelligent person.
That too. But like Congress having an invocation prayer to open their meetings or city council doing that, the courts have routinely found school boards are not the same. There are kids involved here. And because kids are often present at these meetings, that's a school-sponsored event. That's why it's illegal for administrators to push their faith on kids, even if you're not trying to proselytize, if that's the best excuse you have. Like, remember the Joe Kennedy, when he wanted to pray on the football field, even he had to wait till the final whistle blew.
Right.
Because you can't do it during the job.
Yeah.
But afterwards, if you want to, that's the Supreme Court's way of handling that. So anyway, the lawsuit should have been dismissed because prayers don't belong at school board meetings. And she could always pray on her own time. Well, this is what happened a while ago.
Sue a board that you're on?
Oh, yeah, you could sue. So that was a year and a half ago that she filed this lawsuit.
And she's gotten smarter and better since then?
No, she's now the president of the school board.
That was devastating.
Yeah.
Hold on, I just need to sit in my
let
shame
that
for a little
sink
bit.
in.
Okay, keep going.
So earlier this year, a district judge, a Trump appointee, by the way, said, you can't sue the school board over this. He said,
To the woman?
To the woman. He says, you don't have standing to sue. All they did is they said, hey, we're warning you this may not go well. Like, they're telling you can't recite verses at meetings.
Because that's the law.
And basically, any past cases you're using in your defense, they don't make any sense. You haven't actually suffered anything.
Yeah.
Because all they did is warn you, hey, we think this is illegal.
Right.
You can't sue them for saying, hey.
Are you going to sue the law?
Yeah.
Like, what are you?
So, like, it would be a different story if they literally forbade her from doing it. Then maybe she has standing to sue. But they're like, you sued because they gave you advice? What are you doing? So they dismissed her lawsuit, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But it didn't fix the problem. It just said you can't sue them. So what did she do after she got that decision?
Oh my
By the way,
God.
First Liberty says it's going to appeal that decision, but okay, that's where they're at. So she said, well, I'm the board president, and even though you have tossed out my lawsuit, no one has told me I'm allowed to say Bible verses at board meetings.
Are you sure? I think a lot of people have been telling you this,
Yeah.
ma'am, over many years.
So, like, according to one local news outlet, at first her attorneys promised to appeal. Now they say she essentially won because the district will not stop her from quoting the Bible.
They're not going to, like, rush the stage
Right.
and, like, firemen carry her out of there. No, I don't think that was what they were planning.
Yeah.
I think maybe some of these laws were put into place with the understanding that people have a brain in their head and aren't like Amelia Bedelia that thinks everything is extremely literal.
Yes. And so here's the other side of this. Even though she lost the case, it It's been a year and a half that this was in the courts. And guess who's on the other side of that case? The school board that she is on had to defend itself against one of their members,
president.
against their now president. And according to public records that we only found out about this week, which is why I wanted to bring this up, this lawsuit has cost the district roughly $218,000 in legal fees.
Whoa.
They have spent that much, and the final dollar amount will be even higher because the district is awaiting its last bill.
So this is the suit the woman took up.
She privately sued the school district with the help of First Liberty, the right-wing group. The school district had to protect itself, even though they knew they were right, and they didn't do anything wrong. And the judge said the school district didn't do anything wrong.
But they still have to.
But they have to hire lawyers
to
hash it out, and it's cost the district over nearly $250,000.
That's
because
good.
Their school board president thinks she runs a church service. By the way, I was confused when I was doing research on this. I'm like, wait, how many lawsuits are against this district?
Yeah.
There is another lawsuit against the school district, against the school board, because a trans teacher sued the district for harassment, specifically citing Heather Rooks and Rebecca Hill. Rebecca Hill has since resigned from the board, but conservatives have a majority on it, because that teacher sent out a staff-wide email on like the school's email listserv, basically saying, hey, everyone, here's how you could support the International Trans Day of Visibility, which is a thing. And like, if you see students wearing this is what you could do. And they put her on paid administrative leave. And so she has sued the district for harassment because not only that, the teacher says those two school board members began a public campaign against me, referring to this teacher as a child groomer and accusing that teacher of sexualizing children, and that Heather Rooks, the board president, even disclosed that teacher's home address, and afterwards someone tossed a rock at the teacher's window.
Neat.
So that teacher is now suing the district for harassment.
Stoning trans people, and they're like, yes, I love this state and this school.
Which means the school board has to spend even more money to defend itself from the actions of the same school board member who's causing all this trouble. Like, this is what happens when you install ideologically driven right-wing crazy people to run a school district instead of competent adults who are focused on the children.
Yeah, I mean, this is just power grab for power grab's sake. This isn't, they're not trying to make the world better. They're trying to make it more aligned with their vision.
Yeah, and besides the prayer debacle, just to give you a quick rundown, what else do you need to know about Heather Rooks, now the school board president? When she recites the district slogan, which is every student, every day, she has said that, but then she adds, except the girls, because they used to have trans-inclusive policies.
Excuse me? What?
So mutters
what
under
did
her
you
breath,
just
oh,
say
I don't,
to me?
This district doesn't care about the girls because they support trans people. She also follows neo-Nazi social media accounts. She whined about a promotional video about the district's history of racial diversity and inclusion, saying, we're making it all about race.
She's a white person? I can't believe it.
I know. She opposed social workers traveling to an out-of-state conference that was funded by grant money because that conference had sessions on anti-racism components. Wait, she insisted that when the district found its next superintendent, one of the qualifications needs to be
Christian.
that person has to have love of country, which is a weird thing to say.
That is the dumbest thing you've said so far this episode.
No, the next
love
thing is,
of country.
She rejected a free computer science partnership with Microsoft that would have helped a bunch of students. Why? Because Microsoft at the time was bragging about its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So she's like, the kids can't have computers because this is a DEI thing.
Is she going to have a "Are we the baddies" moment? Like, truly, like, at what point do you look around and you're like, oh, yeah, I definitely don't want these kids to have computers, and I definitely don't want anybody to be thoughtful about how they talk to people who have different backgrounds in them. And she's like, boo, I hate shit like that. God only.
On all those things I just mentioned, she was thankfully outnumbered on the school board. However,
But now she's the president.
Now she's the president, and right-wing groups have flipped that board so that a majority of the members are conservative ideologues. So that means they're probably going to rack up even more unnecessary expenses for the district because for those board members, selfishness matters more to them than the kids.
You know, Hemant, I don't think those are good people. That's my hot take on this.
Very good hot take.
Thank you so much.
This is news I have not shared with people. This next story. There you go. So there are some headlines that people have seen, but I got an addition to that people have not seen. It's been 100 days since Trump was inaugurated this time, and we have seen that polling shows his support is dropping, even among his supporters, which makes sense.
Because they're learning what tariffs are finally?
Yeah, right. So according to a new Pew Research Center survey, though, even though he is dropping in support from every group you can find compared to where they were when he was elected, there's one group of voters that hasn't dropped that much. So when you break it down by religion, white evangelicals specifically, still support Trump more than every other group, and the drop in support has been the smallest for white evangelicals. And I'll give you numbers here. Roughly 80% of them voted for Trump in 2024. That's pretty much on par with 2016 and 2020. That represents about 20% of the electorate overall. So 80% of them voted for Trump. Today, 72% of white evangelicals approve of how he's doing. So if you assume they voted for him because they approved him, there has been a little drop. But that's the smallest drop, really, from everybody. Now, here's what's interesting. White evangelicals support Trump now far more than white non-evangelical Christians, 51% approval. White Catholics, 51% approval. What's the approval of Trump among black Protestants?
What?
10%.
There we go.
And for people with no organized religious affiliation, the approval rating is 26%. Okay, again, the numbers overall are not surprising. The headlines are that white evangelicals still give Trump more support than anybody else. And I mean, it just goes to show you no amount of cruelty or lying will convince conservative Christians to waver in their support for him. Like once you've convinced them to accept things on faith, they are all in, and it doesn't matter what evidence you show them. I mean, that's what we used to criticize about their religion, and now it's true for politics as well. Just to reiterate that point, the Pew Research Center also asked participants, how do you feel about the ethical standards of Trump officials like Pete Hegseth, who leaked classified secrets, and RFK Jr., who's decimating our scientific research capabilities and not containing an outbreak of measles? And what about Interior Secretary Doug Burgum, who's getting rid of the people who maintain our national parks? What do you think about their ethical standards on a scale of poor to excellent? 43% of all Americans say the ethics of this administration are poor, the worst option of the five. 43%.
Okay.
Among white evangelicals, 34% say the ethics are excellent.
Outstanding. Wouldn't change a thing.
While another 35% say they're good. So out of the five options, the top got 34%,
so we found
the next
the most
one 35%.
morally bankrupt religion. That was a fun game.
That means nearly
what are we gonna do next?
Nearly 7 in 10 white evangelicals think the Trump administration's ethics are above board. And both of those numbers are higher in those respective categories than every other religious demographic. Like, if you can't tell that this administration is morally bankrupt, and not just say, okay, it's like, I'm sorry, I said there were 5 categories. There are 4. Excellent, good, fair, poor. And there's only one group scale where it's 70%-ish like excellent or good, and that's white evangelicals.
It's so embarrassing.
It is.
It's like, so embarrassing to watch.
Nearly 70% of white evangelicals think this administration is ethical. You should never turn to a white evangelical pastor for guidance on how to live a moral life, because they cannot spot immorality when it's staring them in the face.
Yeah, truly.
Here's another question. Trusting Trump. Do you trust... what percentage of Americans say they trust what Donald Trump says compared to previous presidents?
Oh, boy.
Right?
I don't know.
Right.
Tell me.
So the sort of people who are more willing to believe the planet is 6,000 years old and Jesus came back from the dead and eating an apple caused all the sin in the world, you'll never believe this. They're not good at picking up on bullshit.
What?
57% of white evangelicals said they trust Trump more than previous presidents.
Listen, if there's any white dude who's yelling, they're like, yeah, that guy knows what the fuck is up. Like, there's no way any white dude screaming about nothing is incoherent or wrong.
It's the Joe Rogan demographic. Like, that guy has a smart interview style. Like, no, if you believe that, you'll believe anything.
No.
Black Protestants, only 9% say he's more trustworthy, 18% of religiously unaffiliated Americans, and 37% of white Catholics. Like, 37% of white Catholics are like, yeah, I don't trust this dude. Meanwhile, 57% of white evangelicals are like, I trust everything. Like, you cannot get through to people when it's that level of delusion.
Yeah, because
they'll believe anyone who's white, male, and confident.
They're only seeking out confirmation shit, right? Like they are just a walking confirmation bias.
Yeah. So I was looking at all this data and like none of that surprised me. I'm not surprised that white evangelicals who don't give a damn about their supposed values, even though Donald Trump, by the way, doesn't believe any of them.
Any of it.
They will overlook the family values thing when Trump is separating families. They will ignore the whole care for the least of these when Trump is punishing refugees. So, like, none of that's surprising to me. It's also not surprising that he's underwater with religious nuns, NONES. But I was curious because they did not break down the numbers for atheists specifically. And I assume that's just because you have a low sample size for every single religious group or demographic. But I'm like, you keep giving us numbers for religiously unaffiliated. But like, tell me what it is for. I don't want the like, I believe in some higher power.
Yeah, I'm
but
spiritual.
I don't want that bullshit in my numbers. Give me the numbers for the good people, right? Like, give me the numbers for the atheists who actually know what they're talking about, because they didn't have it in their report, and I didn't know if they would give that to me. I didn't know if they would have that. But for what it's worth, the exit polls in 2024 showed that only 27% of religiously unaffiliated voters voted for Trump. Like, that's lower than most groups, minus like Black Protestants. But like, only 27% of the nuns voted for him. I still haven't found a good number for like atheists who voted for Trump. I know it's lower, but I don't know because they didn't break out those numbers. So I asked them, I'm like, do you have the numbers for atheists? And they said, let us talk to our researchers.
Wait, you can just talk to Pew?
Yeah, it's a robot. And I say, hey, robot, spit this out to me. And they said, excuse me, let me talk to my overlords. And they got back to me and they said, we got your numbers. And I'm like, sweet.
Really?
Yes. So here, this is for the first time. I haven't even published this yet. I got numbers for you for atheists. So we know, I'll just rehash this, for approval for Trump, we know 72% of white evangelicals support him still, while only 26% of religiously unaffiliated Americans feel the same. Among atheists, though, support for Trump, 15%.
Oh, no.
Like, you have to be one of those clueless atheists for liberty types at this point to think Trump is on the right track. Now, the caveat I will give you for all of these numbers is that the sample size is much smaller, which means the margin of error is huge.
Sure.
So do not take these numbers as gospel, which, I mean, that's a dumb saying anyway. But take it with a grain of salt because they don't have a lot of atheists to make this a really precise number. But again, 15% approve. What about ethics? We said 69% of white evangelicals say the Trump administration's ethical standards are excellent or good. We said that. 23% of religiously unaffiliated people feel the same way. Among atheists, 14%. In fact, 80% of atheists say the administration's ethical standards are poor, the worst category. 80% are in the worst pool. Yeah.
Wow. I feel like if you pay attention to elections, you have to understand that 80% is astronomically high.
Yeah, you cannot get 80% of Americans to do anything. What about trusting Trump? We said 57% of white evangelicals trust Trump more than his predecessors. while 18% of religiously unaffiliated Americans felt the same way. Among atheists, only 11% of atheists agreed. And the margin of error for that question is plus or minus 10.6. So it could be as low as like 0%.
Wow. So the number of atheists who like Trump could be just a rounding error?
Pretty much. Like, yes. It turns out that the people who are good at spotting bullshit also see it in politics. So no matter what question you ask about the quality of this presidency, white evangelicals overwhelmingly approve of Trump, while atheists overwhelmingly reject him. And no margin of error is going to take away from that basic fact. And given the way the country is really fed up with his incompetence, like a majority of the country now disapproves of the Trump presidency. It's only been 100 days. It seems that atheists are far more representative of the public at large, ahead of them, arguably, than white evangelicals are.
Sure, that makes sense.
We're the ones whose patriotism should not be questioned, whose demand for quality should not be subject to a right-wing purity test, and whose respect for like the work done by federal workers should be admired by the rest of the country. Now, where do you go from here? If Democrats want to recapture Congress and win the presidency, it would be smart of them to start by reaching out to their most loyal voters, secular Americans. And what does that mean? Doesn't mean you advocate for atheism. It means you openly advocate for church-state separation, funding for scientific research, accountability for all employees, not in the haphazard Doge way, but like actual accountability, acceptance of reason-based policies, and a return to like actual goddamn morality as pillars of what the party represents. That, by the way, is a lot of what the Congressional Free Thought Caucus claims to be doing. But like the whole party should be doing the exact same thing.
Yeah. Well, I think I just want to give everybody a moment to sit and feel smug.
Yes, you earned it.
We did it.
We earned it.
We all think Trump's an idiot. Congratulations.
Yes.
We are the smartest of the bunch.
Good on us.
Good for us. Don't throw your shoulder up, patting yourself in the back. But hey, a win's a win's a win, you know?
There you go. I got one final story for you. It's another update for you. This is another happy update.
Oh.
There's a
this
church.
Is a weird
I know, it's a weird show.
Calvary.
There's a church in California, Calvary Chapel, San Jose, and they made headlines in May of 2020 because in the midst of the pandemic, we're all at home. They were hosting large indoor services, not requiring face masks, and not telling people to socially distance. Even beyond that, the pastor, Mike McClure, he was bragging during live streams about how the church is not compliant with local regulations, saying, quote, God doesn't want us to isolate ourselves. All of us need to be in the sanctuary. I don't care what they say. I'm never again going to close the doors, ever. And so by the end of the month, May of 2020, that church was holding 2 services every Sunday with like 300 to 500 people indoors. No one was required to wear a mask. And in the months to follow, he kept telling his congregation not to wear masks, even if their health, much less the health of everyone else, is at risk. And then he spread lies like you have a 99.99 chance of not dying if you catch the virus. And that the mask ordinance in the community...
hate when people make up statistics.
Dude. And then he said the mask ordinance in San Jose was an example of religious persecution in America. So, in October of 2020, the county of Santa Clara was like, we need to find a way to stop this dude.
Yeah.
Because we need to mitigate the threat of COVID. Vaccines are not available yet. And they issued an ordinance saying people have to wear face masks in all indoor public spaces with limited exceptions.
Yeah. So
to their credit, when it came to this church, they did not look the other way. They fined the church more than $350,000 for violating their ordinance. And the church did not pay up. So the county sued them and demanded the court shut the place down.
We did it.
Now, the church was not shut down, but the fines kept growing. And eventually, between administrative fines and late fees and actual violations...
Did they fold?
The church owed nearly $4 million to the county. So, 2 years ago,
much money.
To the day, about 2 years ago, a judge in California issued a decision on the matter. Basically, what she said is that the county's regulations at the time They were legal. Yeah. They were generally applicable. They were not going after Christians. They were going after all indoor spaces like that. And the exemptions that they made for health, for like groceries or something, those were sensible.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the church, quote, unilaterally gave themselves a blanket exception for all of their activities at any time in any location, regardless of the number of attendees.
Yeah.
So there was no evidence that the local government. There was no evidence, the judge said, that the local government treated secular activities comparable to church services any more favorably.
Yeah.
So there's no discrimination happening here. And then the judge also noted that not wearing masks had consequences.
Yeah.
She wrote, unfortunately, the judge repeatedly refused to model, much less enforce, this gesture. Instead, they repeatedly flouted their refusal to comply with the public health orders and urged others to do so. Who cares what the cost? That's a quote, including death. And finally, she says,
I want to kiss this woman on the mouth.
And she said that with a mask. And she said the church has no right to complain about the excessive costs. They were like, well, you're finding us too much. She said, you don't get to complain about that because you could have prevented it entirely if you just followed the damn rules.
Yeah.
So the judge said, I'll eliminate certain fines here, but you still have to pay this county $1.2 million.
Good.
Like money finally flowing in the right direction.
Yeah.
But it was a small price to pay, honestly, for the harm caused by the Christians' ignorance and selfishness.
Well, I'm sure they're not like charging them per death, but that would be an interesting system, wouldn't it be?
Now, at the time, again, 2 years ago, the county celebrated this decision saying, yeah, the health officer's public health orders and enforcement saved thousands of lives and resulted in one of the lowest death rates of any community in the United States. We are gratified that the court once again saw through Calvary's unsupported claims and found them meritless.
It is. It is extremely
good.
refreshing to hear a judge call a spade a spade.
Yes. Now, the church said, we're going to fight this ruling. We're going to appeal it. But, like, their arguments had been dismantled. I don't know where you challenge, on what grounds you challenge them.
What could they, like, what leg do they have left to stand on besides just religious fervor?
Yeah. What they said in their, their appeal is that the public health orders requiring masks, they were unconstitutional, that the county violated due process, and the fines were excessive. Now, here's the news. Here's why I'm bringing this up all again. They appealed, and the appellate court in California heard that case, and they finally issued a ruling this past month. And what they ruled is, yeah, just listen to your judge. Yes! They said the county did not treat the church any differently. There's no proof otherwise. Even if you don't like the safety measures that the government imposed,
you can literally die mad about it if you want.
They were applied to everyone equally. And I want to read you the very end of this. Further, this is from the appellate court's ruling. Further, it cannot be disputed that COVID-19 is a highly contagious disease that caused severe illness and death during a global pandemic, that Calvary Chapel was aware that some of its congregants had contracted COVID-19, and its school, because they have a private Christian school, had sustained a serious outbreak.
Oh, no.
We therefore determine that the undisputed facts show that Calvary Chapel's level of culpability due to violating the public health orders requiring face coverings is high. And therefore, the fines in the amount of $1.2 million do not violate the excessive fines clause of the Eighth Amendment because the fines are not grossly disproportionate to Calvary Chapel's culpability.
Wow.
Like, for the harm you caused, you should be thankful it's only $1.2 million.
Wow.
So, like, to be clear, the church could have live streamed its services. They could have held in-person services that adhered to local restrictions.
They opted out.
They opted out. They did not want to play by the rules. They said, we're Christians, so we get to break the rules and spread a disease and put everyone in danger.
Yeah, I mean, really, COVID laid bare the fact that most religious arguments are just, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Like, truly, they're like toddlers. Like, truly, like, well, but I don't want to wear a mask. Well, yeah, I don't want to be in the middle of a giant fucking pandemic, but needs must, friend.
By the way, you know how much Calvary Chapel hates the government? In 2020, they said, hey, government, can we have $340,000 in PPP loans to pay employees who are, safely at home because they can't work for us in the building, even though the church is the only reason we're talking about this is because the church was open anyway. But they're like, hey, we need all this money. And by the way, that loan was forgiven, as all of them were. Like, they had no problem taking money from the government when it helped their bank account. It was only when the government fined them for breaking rules for different reasons that they're like, why is the government so against us?
Oh my God. I hope that they learned a lesson, and I am not confident that they did.
Yes.
That's so nice to hear. I cannot express how lovely it is to have some okay news.
Now, even if they want to fight this one, it's not going to the U.S. Supreme Court. It's a California thing. It would go to the California Supreme Court.
Okay, but
again, you still have no argument, so it's a waste of your time at this point.
Then you need to explain to me why the Oklahoma thing is up at the Supreme Court.
Because they're saying you're violating the federal law as well. This isn't a local ordinance we're fighting over. In Oklahoma, they're saying, you told us we can't have it, not because we violated the Oklahoma Constitution, but we also violated the First Amendment.
I see.
So
wow,
that's it. Lots of stuff.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. You can always support us by going to patreon.com/friendlyatheistpodcast. Go to friendlyatheist.com and get your merch if you want. There's a lot of good stuff there. And we got a really sweet letter from one person, which Jess is going to read. Remember, you can also leave a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a nice review.
Right.
And yeah.
This is an email that we got from listener Sarah R. Hi, Hemmett and Jessica. I love your podcast. I'm very excited to now have bonus feed access as a new Patreon member. Your podcast is the first one my husband got me into listening to. At first, I'd just listen on road trips. Then I got hooked and listened every week. Great topics, and you both bring excellent perspectives. It's so impressive and appreciated that you put out a weekly episode. Thank you. It is impressive. We've never missed a week in 10 years. Also, Hemmett, we do the New York Times Crossword Daily, and we have found yours fun and challenging.
Thank you.
I wanted to also take this moment to say happy 10-year anniversary to my previously mentioned husband, Alex. Thanks for letting me shout him out. So happy 10-year anniversary. My 10-year anniversary is also this year, which is very exciting.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and we appreciate that.
That was really nice. And Friendly Atheist Podcast at gmail.com. You can leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen. Bonus episode.
What are we talking about?
Well, good news. I just saw the best fucking movie of all time. It's called Sinners.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen it? Do you know anything about it?
That's it. You're going to tell me about it.
I can't think of the last time I was just so swept away by a movie. So that was great. I'm not going to talk about this much more, but our gotcha day for the dog just passed. We've had Dottie for 8 years now, so we love her. Adopt, don't shop. I went to the DuPage Children's Museum over the weekend. I saw Paul F. Tompkins over the weekend. And yeah, I'll talk about those things. Paul F. Tompkins did finish his show by singing Trouble in River City from the musical Music Man, and it made my little dorky heart sing, and I still know a lot of the words to that stupid fucking song because I was in it in 2001.
Lovely. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Goodbye.